both humans and animals engage in behavior that metes out punishment for wrongdoing. Actions have consequences. You stir up a hornet's nest, you're going to be faced with an angry army of hornets. And the response may not be proportional. The price to pay for a minor transgression can be high. Depending on the circumstances, one little poke could cost you your life, as these creatures seek to protect theirs. But reprisal isn't just about defense. Humans and other species have evolved to use retaliatory aggression to maintain social order. Individuals learn from paying penalties for misconduct. Children, especially, they discover right and wrong through a system of reward and punishment. And penalties, they don't just teach. Their potential also serves as a deterrent. The mere threat of retribution makes people behave differently. Retaliation is not unnatural, nor is it evil altogether. On the contrary, it is the blueprint for much of what goes on this planet. So why does today's gospel and elsewhere in the Bible ask human beings to do otherwise? Why in the world would Jesus ask us to do something that thousands of years of evolution have developed as a way of keeping stability and peace? Perhaps a clue lies in verses 43 through 48 of today's gospel. Jesus begins by outlining the traditional view. You have heard it said. Your experience and convention have taught you to live a balanced life. And people have done this by rewarding good and punishing bad. For humans, this is justice. But Jesus invites his disciples to shift their perspectives, to see things differently, as God does. And that's all fair and well. But it seems a bit out of touch, to be frank. It isn't a great consolation to consider a perspective that is so distant from this reality. We've got to protect ourselves and educate our offspring and safeguard order. Down here on this planet, we're struggling with real life. Doesn't that matter? I think the answer is yes. It does matter. Human existence matters so much to God that God became a human being in this time and this space. We are not mere details, nor are we pawns in some game. And that must be part of our perspective. You see, God understands here and now, but God also understands there, then, and tomorrow. And in this passage, Jesus is inviting us to do the same. For too long, our perspectives have been blind to the connection we have to the world and to one another. And although we may know that everything is connected from the likes of Professor Brian Cox or Neil deGrasse Tyson, or if you have seen recently the film Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which, by the way, I think is one of the best films I have ever seen, it is quickly forgotten. Today's gospel, along with other voices, are trying to help us see something bigger. In our narrow perspective, without this view, we fail to be open. We fail to hold off judgment in complicated situations, and instead, we act out of impulse and habit. We lose the scale of time and become impatient and lash out. But God's way is different. For God, nothing happens in isolation. Each bit, each person is a part of creation which has its own integrity. There is, in fact, a balance that exists, an arrangement that God holds in its totality. God is not the God of a particular section or quadrant of the universe. God is the God of everything that is. And if it is God's kingdom, a better way that we seek, then maybe we'd do well with allowing a full understanding of God and God's creation to influence our view. Seen from a heavenly place, the sun rises on the evil and the good, rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous. God redeems everything that is, because God loves all that God has made. Love your friends? Anyone can do that. Seek retaliation and retribution? That kind of behavior, it comes naturally. But in today's gospel, Jesus tries to get his disciples to widen their perspectives and review their customs. And that certainly upsets centuries of tradition, flies in the face of what many will regard as natural, and disturbs an order on which much is built. But the disciples of the Lord are building something new, with new management and a new imperative. And that is where our sights are set, on the perfection of all that exists. And if that's where we want to head, we'll need to ensure that everything we see is from the proper perspective.